Welcome to Scratch. As you probably know, Scratch is a visual, object or block-based programming language. If this sounds too official, we can also think of it as a creative platform for us to build lots of interactive and creative content. Animations, visual stories, games, and the like. You can download and install Scratch on your computer or use it online like what we do here. After you create your account and log in into Scratch, this is your landing page. To create content, you click here on Create, which takes you on our main interface right here. The first thing you'll notice is that this space is divided into 5 main panels. On the left, there's a programming palette or block library that contains our code blocks that will be used to build our codes. In the panel next to it, the script or the block editor, which is right here on the right. Since these deserve their own introduction, which will follow in the second lesson, the remainder of this lesson will focus on what is right here on the right. And here at the top, we have a stage, which is where everything we set and code takes place, hence the name, the stage. 2 components that make up the stage are sprites, or sprite in this case right here, and the backdrop. Every time you start a new project, a default sprite, a cat, will be placed automatically on a plain white backdrop, which is a background, right? Both sprites and backdrops have their editors under the stage, so let's introduce them. In principle, a sprite is an image, but it's called a sprite because it takes on the role of a character, so because it can be assigned different actions. Backdrop is essentially a background, as we already said, and its palette right here on the right has different options to choose a different backdrop. So obviously we don't have to use this plain white, right? We can go choose a backdrop, we can paint our own backdrop, we can sort of get like a random backdrop chosen for us, or we can even upload the backdrop if we created it outside in some other application, right? And saved it on our computer or in the cloud. So what's going to be useful for right now, if we go to choose a backdrop, besides obviously seeing all these various backdrops that we can choose from, the one that actually is kind of useful for us right now is this grid. Because this grid background actually gives us a sense how the motion on the stage is organized and recognized. So every point across the stage is basically set in the XY coordinate system, where the 0 is right in the center. This also tells us that the extent across the stage goes from x minus 240 to on the left all the way to the right to plus 240, while vertically the bottom is at minus 118y and the top is 118y, right? So you can think of these as points across the stage or pixels if you wish, right? On say on the screen, for instance, right? We have a similar palette right here for our sprite, right? So we can also choose a different sprite, we can paint our own sprite, get a random one, or upload the sprite if we created it or downloaded it from somewhere else and we want to bring it in, onto our stage, right? So as we moved right here onto the sprite itself, let's see what we have here. First, you notice we have this icon, right, for the sprite that is currently on the stage, and as we bring more sprites, right, we can have as many sprites as we wish. We'll have an icon for each of our sprites that are currently on the stage. Right now it's just the cat. For this cat, we can, and for any other sprite, we can change the name, right? So let's say we call this sprite a cat, change the name, and then to the right we see that there are coordinates, right? So there's the x coordinate and y coordinate of the sprite. So currently there's zeros, sprite is right in the center. We can drag this sprite, right, across the stage, and you see as we do that, we see the change in coordinates. So the sprite is currently at 82 in x and minus 46 in y. Or we can type in here coordinates. So let's say we bring it back to 0, right? So we type in 0 and 0, and the sprite is going to go back right in the center of the stage. What else do we have? We have a basically option to switch between our sprite being visible to show it or to hide it, right? If we click here, so we can do that. And also we can change the size. So whatever image is brought in to be a sprite, it's automatically assumed that the size that is brought in is full size, 100%, right? Here we can change it. So we can then change it to say half the size, for instance, 50, right? Or we can double the size, 200, and anything that we desire, right? We can change the size of the sprite. So let's go back to 100 for now. It doesn't matter. And the last one that we have here is the direction, right? So if we click here, the direction, we notice that 90 degrees direction is basically to the right. So, and you see this arrow. As we basically move this slider, we can rotate our sprite. So you see as we go up, the angle is going to decrease. Now it's 43. As we go all the way to the top, it's going to be 0, which means that pointing all the way up is 0. That's where it starts to count the angle. And then we go into this direction, 90, and so on. We can also type in, as for the coordinate, if we want 180, right? It's going to be pointing straight down. But one thing to notice, as it's fully rotatable, as our sprite turns to the left, you notice also that it's kind of upside down, right? Because it just purely rotates. And that's maybe not what we want sometimes. We don't want our sprite to be upside down. In that case, we can also limit rotation of our sprite to move only left and right. This is this button right here. So if we click here and we rotate it, we notice that the sprite actually has only two orientations. It's going to be turned either right or left, but correctly. And the last option that we have is basically not to allow any rotation for the sprite. Okay, so this pretty much covers everything we wanted to show here. The only one thing that we can show for this first lesson, I don't want it to be too overwhelming really, is just this button right here. It would just give us a full screen view of our stage. So when we want to demonstrate, right, our code or animation or game, whatever, we can switch to this full view and just focus on the execution, right? And then here, if we click, right, we go back to our original panel or original interface that has these 5 main panels. Okay, the next topic is going to be covering these code blocks right here and how we start to basically use these code blocks to start to create some very simple code at the beginning. We're going to start very light, and then we're probably going to follow up with the in-detail discussion of sprites, because sprites are our main actors here, main characters in whatever we make, and we want to maybe spend also a little bit more time on introducing sprites properly, right? So this closes our first lesson, and until the next lesson, bye.